Greetings, and welcome to this brief introduction to Plato's dialogue, The Republic. Now, Plato's Republic occupies 10 books. The first way to think about it is via its theme, justice. The treatment of that theme falls into two main parts. First, there's the inquiry into the question, what is justice? That inquiry takes place in Book 1. Second, there's the defense of the goodness of justice. That defense occupies the rest of the Republic, Books 2 to 10. So those are the two main parts, very unequal ones. The shorter inquiry into what justice is, and the much longer defense of justice as good. But we must immediately notice that the second part also divides itself into two very unequal parts. The first part of the defense of justice is that it is good in itself, good for its own sake. That defense occupies books 2 through 9. The second part of the defense of justice is that it also brings the greatest external rewards. That defense takes place in Book 10. So that's the highest bird's eye view of the Republic. Its first book offers an inquiry into what justice is, its last book defends justice as bringing the greatest external rewards, and the 8 books in between defend justice as good in itself. The whole thing, if you notice, is symmetrical. 1 book, 8 books, 1 book. Once you notice that quality, you can start noticing many other points of symmetry. For example, the discussion in Book 1 pretty much starts with the question, what happens after you die? Much later, Book 10 ends with a myth, a story about what happens after you die. So, the theme of justice points to another way we can try to understand the Republic as a whole, by looking at the definitions of justice it offers. There are 4 of them. The first 3 occur in Book 1. They are, first, justice is telling the truth and paying back what you owe. Second, justice is helping friends and harming enemies. And third, justice is the advantage of the stronger. Now, Socrates, the main speaker in the Republic, spends time trying to understand each of these 3 definitions. But he spends the most time laying the ground for the 4th definition of justice, a definition that he arrives at by asking what a just soul looks like. And then, in order to see the soul through looking at something bigger, he imagines and describes a city in speech, a city whose citizens are devoted to justice, to doing the right thing. On this basis, he comes to this 4th definition, namely that justice is minding your own business. Yes, justice is doing your part. If you're a farmer, it means being the best farmer you can be. If you're a soldier, it means being all you can be as a soldier. And if you're a ruler, it means being the best ruler, which means constantly focusing on the good of the whole city, not just any one part, including yourself. Socrates arrives at this 4th definition of justice, the last definition of justice in the Republic, at the end of Book 4. So why doesn't the Republic end there? Because at the beginning of Book 5, several of the other people present exclaim that Socrates has failed to explain some very odd things about his city and speech. First, for it to be most just, he says that the citizens cannot have any private property. There has to be communism. Second, for there to be complete communism, they cannot even have private households. They have to share women and children in common too. And then Socrates drops a 3rd bomb. For the city to be completely just, philosophers would have to be kings, or kings would have to philosophize. Now, this last point seems absolutely absurd, since in every actual city, the philosophers appear to be the most useless people. So Socrates spends books 6 and 7 explaining who philosophers truly are and why philosophy is most useful. Now, recall for a moment the overall symmetry of the Republic. In anything symmetrical, what's this privileged point? The center, or the middle. At the very center of the Republic, Socrates defines the philosopher, the person who completely loves wisdom, who seeks wholeheartedly everything that can be known, who refuses to live within the dream world of opinion. If you look at the world through the philosopher's eyes, then in fact the rest of the city looks like a ship of madmen. Now remember that the 4th definition of justice, minding your own business, occurs within the part of the Republic devoted primarily to the defense of justice as good in itself. So this definition is conditioned by that defense. Whatever justice is, it seems noble or beautiful. Its defense then beautifies everything around it. So this definition of philosophy too may be rather more beautiful than the reality. And here's a hint that this is the case. In Book 7, Socrates says that the philosophers, even in this most just city, will not want to rule. They will have to be forced to rule. That is, they will have to be forced by non-philosophers not to mind their own business. In short, even the most just city rests on an injustice. So, we've looked at the Republic from the standpoint of its treatment of its theme, an inquiry into and then a defense of justice, and then from the standpoint of its four definitions of justice. I want to share one more way of thinking about it, from the standpoint of the conversations and the interlocutors involved in those conversations. After all, the Republic is a dialogue, not a treatise. In it, Socrates reports a long conversation he had with various people. Once again, this long conversation falls into three main parts. First, Socrates talks with a father and son. The father, Cephalus, proposes the definition of justice as telling the truth and paying back what you owe, which his son, Polemarchus, modifies in his attempt to defend it into the definition that justice is helping friends and harming enemies. Second, Socrates talks with a sophist, a professor, named Thrasymachus, who argues that justice is the advantage of the stronger. And third, Socrates has a much longer conversation with two brothers, Glaucon and Adimantus. This conversation with the two brothers occupies books 2 to 10, the part devoted to the defense of justice. So once more we see a symmetry. Two sets of conversations with two sets of family members, first a father and a son, and second two brothers, surround one conversation with an individual. Again, where there is symmetry, there is a center, and that center is Socrates' conversation with Thrasymachus. If you look closely at him, you'll see that Thrasymachus brings together in one character a concern for excellence, an attachment to politics, a commitment to teaching, and above all, a refusal to live a lie. He doggedly wants to know what justice is and not be fooled, because he knows that that knowledge is among the most important things to know for the whole of life. He reminds us of what is at stake.